You ever watch a hamster on a wheel? Just spinning and spinning, thinking it's going somewhere? That's you. That's your kid. Except the hamster wheel is glowing with blue light, feeding them an endless drip of dopamine, while their spine curls into a lowercase c, and their social skills evaporate like water in the desert. You don't believe me? Go to a park. Watch a group of teenagers. They're not playing, they're not talking. They're sitting on a bench, scrolling, their brains marinating in a soup of curated nonsense, their posture screaming evolution in reverse. They're anxious, depressed, and lonely as hell, and you let it happen because it was convenient, because a screen is quieter than a tantrum, because everyone else was doing it. Well, congratulations, you've just enrolled your child in the largest uncontrolled psychological experiment in human history. And the results? They're rolling in. Spoiler alert, they're not good. Welcome to the anxious generation. Let's talk about what went wrong. Introduction. Growing up on Mars. Jonathan Haidt is not your average armchair philosopher. He's a social psychologist who has spent decades studying morality, happiness, and the psychological roots of division. He's written books that punch you in the face with uncomfortable truth. The Righteous Mind, The Coddling of the American Mind. And now he's back to tell you what you already suspect but don't want to admit. Your kid is not okay. In The Anxious Generation, how the great rewiring of childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness, Haidt lays out the case that childhood, real, embodied, adventurous, scraped knees and bad decisions childhood, has been hijacked, stolen, replaced with a thin, artificial simulation of social life that runs on algorithms and leaves kids lonelier than ever. Haidt isn't just shaking his fist at the internet like some old man yelling at a cloud. He's got the receipts. The data is clear. Anxiety and depression among teenagers skyrocketed after 2010. Self-harm and suicide rates shot up. Friendships became shallower, relationships weaker, attention spans crumbled like stale cookies. And yet, what did we do? We doubled down. We gave kids more screens, less independence, and zero preparation for the real world. But here's the kicker. It didn't have to be this way. This book is about how we got here, who's to blame, and what the hell we're gonna do about it. If you're a parent, a teacher, or just a human being who cares about the next generation, buckle up. This isn't a gentle bedtime story. It's a wake-up call. And trust me, you need it. Welcome to Mindful Reads Hub. Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Surge of Suffering. Let's talk about suffering. Not your mild, I had to wait 5 minutes for my coffee suffering. Not your, they forgot my extra guac at Chipotle suffering. No, real, deep, gnawing at the soul suffering. The kind that wrecks people. The kind that changes an entire generation. Haidt lays out a disturbing reality. We're in the middle of a mental health catastrophe, and no one wants to admit that it's not just some abstract societal shift, it's something we did. And it started in the early 2000s and 10s. Something broke in Gen Z. Anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide rates didn't just increase, they exploded. If you were looking at a graph, you'd see a flat line through the 2000s and then, bam, a hockey stick straight up around 2012. Coincidence? No. Haidt is here with the data, and he's about to ruin your excuses. It's not global warming, it's not school shootings, it's not even the economy. Those things were happening before 2012, and guess what? Kids were doing better in the early 2000s. So what changed? Your kid's brain, their social life, their entire reality, because you handed them a smartphone and let it devour their childhood. Haidt's research breaks it down. The rise of mental illness is overwhelmingly about anxiety and depression. These are classified as internalizing disorders, where people turn their distress inward, withdraw, ruminate, and feel hopeless. Girls are suffering more than boys, but both genders are experiencing a surge in these disorders. Externalizing disorders, aggression, acting out, are actually going down. Less fighting, less rebellion, less risk-taking. That might sound good, but it's actually horrifying. It means kids aren't even pushing against the world anymore. They're retreating into themselves. Self-harm has skyrocketed, particularly among young girls. The rates of emergency room visits for self-inflicted injuries doubled for girls aged 10 to 14 between 2010 and 2020. And before you start rolling out your favorite excuses, let's kill some myths. Kids are just more open about mental health now. Cute theory, wrong. If that were true, we'd see an increase in reporting, but not in actual hospital visits for self-harm. But guess what? The hospital visits skyrocketed too. The world is just more stressful now. Oh really? Because the economy was worse in 2008 and teen mental health was better back then. Try again. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Sure, and maybe gravity is optional. The real reason for this mental health explosion? Height's data points to one overwhelming factor, the Great Rewiring. Around the 2012, the world handed every teenager a pocket-sized supercomputer, filled it with algorithmically optimized social pressure, and told them to replace their real-world interactions with screens. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Social media turned adolescence into a performance instead of an experience. Every interaction is tracked, measured, and judged by invisible algorithms and an audience of peers. Kids went from playing outside to doom scrolling inside. Free play, where kids learned how to navigate social life and take risks, was replaced with curated Instagram aesthetics and TikTok trends. Sleep deprivation went from a bad habit to a lifestyle. With 24/7 access to social validation or rejection, kids stopped sleeping and their brains started breaking. The result? We didn't just make kids more anxious, we rewired their brains. And now, we're sitting around wondering why they can't handle stress, why they're drowning in loneliness, why they're miserable despite having access to more entertainment, more connection, and more comfort than any generation before them. Height makes it crystal clear. We stole childhood and replaced it with a digital hellscape, and now we're paying the price. Key takeaway: the explosion of teen anxiety, depression, and self-harm didn't happen by accident. It coincides perfectly with the rise of smartphone-based childhoods. The Great Rewiring, shifting kids from real-world play to screen-based socialization, broke an entire generation. Chapter 2: What children need to do in childhood. Imagine you went to sleep in 2007, before the iPhone was released. You wake up a decade later, and the world looks the same, except the people don't. They're hunched over, heads tilted down, absorbed in glowing rectangles. Conversations are scarce. Even kids are glued to screens, hypnotized. If you'd been asleep long enough, you'd think you had woken up into some dystopian sci-fi novel. But nope. This is just modern childhood, 21st century edition. Height opens this chapter with a brutal reality check. Childhood is a developmental period, not a holding pattern. Kids aren't just waiting to become adults, they are actively constructing their minds and social abilities through real-world interaction. And we've ripped that away from them. Children grow in phases, and the way they experience the world in each phase determines what kind of adults they will become. Height explains that human childhood is different from other species because we have a slow growth childhood, a long extended period of brain wiring and cultural learning before we fully develop. Other animals just grow, hit maturity, and reproduce. But humans? We spend years in a prolonged state of learning, experimenting, and adapting. That is by design, and guess what? That process requires real-life experiences. Not screens, not likes, not curated online personas. Real, messy, unpredictable, physical experiences. Height outlines what kids need to do during childhood. Spoiler, it's the opposite of what they're doing now. 1. They need free play. Not structured activities, not parent-approved playdates, but wild, unregulated, self-organized play where they make the rules, take the risks, and learn to navigate social hierarchies. 2. They need to explore, to venture into the world, take small risks, and learn from trial and error. That means skinning knees, getting lost, making mistakes, and figuring it out. Every scraped knee is a life lesson. Every moment of uncertainty builds resilience. 3. They need a secure base, but not a prison. A child's attachment to parents should be a launch pad, not a leash. Kids need to feel safe coming home, but they should also feel safe leaving home. whether that means playing outside alone or walking to school without a digital tracking device. 4. They need face-to-face socialization, not DMs, not group texts, not Snapchat streaks. They need to argue, negotiate, joke, and bond in person where human interaction isn't filtered through an algorithm. 5. They need to fail. If a child never experiences small failures, they will not know how to handle big ones. We have wrapped children in bubble wrap and then been shocked when they emerge fragile and anxious. Haidt argues that modern childhood has been hijacked, and the consequences are devastating. We've replaced adventure with surveillance, independence with supervision, and social learning with artificial online validation. Do you know what happens when kids don't get the play-based experiences they need? Their brains don't develop properly. The ability to regulate emotions, handle stress, and navigate social challenges gets stunted. And when those kids grow up, they don't suddenly become functional adults. They become chronically anxious, socially awkward, and emotionally fragile. Parents, be honest with yourself. Do you trust your kids to handle real life? If the answer is no, ask yourself why. Is it because the world is actually more dangerous? Or is it because you never let them face it? Because here's the harsh truth. The world isn't more dangerous. The crime rate has gone down since the 90s, but the way we treat childhood has turned it into a prison sentence. We told kids the outside world was unsafe, so they stayed inside. We told them to be scared of strangers, so they never learned to interact with people. We told them failure was dangerous, so they never learned to handle setbacks. And then we handed them a smartphone and told them, here, this is your world now. And now we're confused when they grow up anxious, depressed, and incapable of handling basic adult challenges. We did this. Haidt doesn't mince words. We need to give childhood back to children. Let them climb the damn tree. Let them get lost and find their way home. Let them fail, struggle, and overcome challenges without helicopter parenting them into oblivion. If we don't, we're not just robbing them of their childhood. We're robbing them of their future. Key takeaway. Children are not mini adults waiting to grow up. They are active learners who require real-world experiences, risk, play, exploration, and failure to develop into functional, resilient adults. The moment we replaced playground fights with online fights, adventures with screens, and real conversations with Snapchat streaks, we rewired an entire generation for anxiety, fragility, and social incompetence. Chapter 3. Discover mode and the need for risky play. There's a difference between surviving and living. Surviving is what a lab rat does in a cage. Food provided, temperature controlled, no predators, no risk. Living is what a wild animal does. Exploring, hunting, testing its limits, learning from pain and failure. The problem? Kids today are caged, not by bars but by paranoia, helicopter parents, and safety-obsessed institutions that have stripped childhood of every essential element of growth. Haidt lays out a devastating truth. We didn't just make kids anxious. We trained them to fear everything, and now they are stuck in defend mode, constantly scanning for threats, paralyzed by uncertainty, unable to navigate even minor challenges. Kids are wired for exploration. The human brain evolved to seek novelty, take risks, and master challenges through trial and error. That's what childhood is for. Haidt introduces the idea of discover mode versus defend mode, two competing systems in the brain that determine how kids engage with the world. Discover mode is active when a child feels safe enough to explore. They take risks, make mistakes, and learn from the world around them. They climb trees, scrape their knees, get in arguments, resolve conflicts, and develop real-life skills. Defend mode kicks in when a child perceives danger. They withdraw, avoid risks, and focus on self-protection rather than growth. When kids spend too much time in defend mode, their brains get stuck there, making them chronically anxious, socially awkward, and unable to handle stress. For most of human history, kids spent most of their time in discover mode. They ran in the woods, climbed things they shouldn't, built forts, fell down, got back up, and figured life out. But today, they're in defend mode all the time, and you don't have to guess why. Haidt exposes how we got here. 1. We banned risk from childhood. In the 90s, parents and schools started treating childhood like a liability lawsuit waiting to happen. Playgrounds got softer, recess got shorter, and kids stopped playing outside because what if something happens? What happened instead? They stopped developing resilience. 2. We let screens hijack adventure. Instead of climbing trees, kids climb digital leaderboards. Instead of wrestling with friends, they battle Fortnite avatars. But guess what? Video game risks don't train you for real life. They don't teach pain tolerance, risk assessment, or real-world problem solving. 3. We replace childhood with surveillance. Today's kids are tracked 24/7, GPS watches, phone tracking, constant adult supervision. They never get to make real decisions without an authority figure hovering over them. The result? They enter adulthood with the decision-making skills of a lost puppy. Hype makes it painfully clear. The things we took away from childhood weren't luxuries. They were essential biological and psychological training tools. Risky play isn't just fun. It's a biological necessity. Risk teaches competence. The kid who climbs a tree and falls learns how to climb better next time. The kid who gets lost and finds their way home develops independence. But if you never take a risk, you never build the confidence to handle real life. This is why kids who engage in risky play are less anxious than kids who don't. Studies show that kids who experience controlled risks, climbing, roughhousing, exploring alone, actually develop fewer fears and stronger emotional resilience. And yet, we ripped risk out of childhood. We told kids, don't climb that, you'll fall. Don't walk to school alone, someone will kidnap you. Don't play rough, you might get hurt. So they stopped. And now, they're terrified of everything. Here's the most insane part. We didn't actually make kids safer. Childhood has never been safer than it is today. Crime rates are lower than they were in the 80s and 90s. Yet somehow, kids are more scared than ever. And do you know where all that fear went? Online. We told kids the real world was dangerous, so they retreated into the internet. And guess what? The internet is way worse than the real world. Social media turned childhood into a never-ending psychological battleground. It replaced scraped knees with emotional trauma, real friends with algorithm-driven validation, and real-world dangers with 24/7 digital stress. Haidt's message is brutally simple. Bring back risky play, or accept that the next generation will be weak, anxious, and afraid of their own shadow. Let kids climb the tree, wrestle with their friends, get lost, get hurt, and figure things out. Stop treating them like fragile glass dolls and start letting them become humans who can handle the real world. Because the alternative? We've already seen it. It's a generation trapped in defend mode, permanently anxious, constantly on edge, and unable to function without a screen between them and reality. Key takeaway. Kids are biologically wired to seek risk because risk is how they learn, grow, and develop emotional resilience. By removing real-world risks from childhood, we didn't make kids safer. We made them weaker, more anxious, and permanently stuck in defend mode. Chapter 4. Puberty and the block transition to adulthood. You're not a kid, but you're not an adult either. You're trapped in this weird limbo, floating between childhood and responsibility, where everyone expects you to grow up, but won't let you actually do anything. That's not an accident. That's modern society, sabotaging an entire generation's transition into adulthood. Haidt lays out a brutal reality. Puberty isn't just about getting taller, getting acne, and realizing your parents are painfully embarrassing. It's the most intense neurological rewiring your brain will ever go through besides early childhood. Everything you experience during this time gets hardwired into your brain, shaping the kind of adult you will become. For most of human history, puberty meant change. At 13, 14, 15, you weren't just some overgrown child. You were training for adulthood. Different cultures had rites of passage, ceremonies, rituals, challenges that marked the transition from child to adult. These weren't just empty traditions. They were a psychological shift, a way of telling you and your community, this person is no longer a child. Now, there's no transition. Puberty starts, but nothing changes. No milestones, no new responsibilities, no clear markers of adulthood. just a long, awkward waiting period where you're expected to act mature but aren't given any actual freedom. Haidt explains how modern society has blocked the transition to adulthood in three major ways. 1. We removed rites of passage. Cultures used to have clear milestones, tribal initiation ceremonies, religious confirmations, even just learning to hunt or work. Today, your milestone is getting a smartphone and scrolling yourself into oblivion. 2. We infantilized teenagers. Used to be that by 14, 15, 16, you had real responsibilities, working, traveling alone, making serious decisions. Now, you're monitored, tracked, supervised, and treated like a helpless child until you're suddenly expected to be an adult at 18. 3. We dumped adolescence into the digital world. Instead of gaining experience in the real world, Gen Z got shoved into an online simulation of life. You weren't given real challenges, you were given Snapchat streaks, TikTok trends, and an endless scroll of digital distractions. Think about it. You can't drive until 16, you can't vote until 18, you can't drink until 21. The legal system treats you like a literal child until your mid-20s. And yet, society still expects you to magically emerge as a fully functional adult the moment you hit some arbitrary birthday. The result? A generation that never learned to navigate risk, handle independence, or take responsibility. We extended childhood indefinitely, leaving people mentally stuck in adolescence well into their 20s. Haidt introduces the concept of experience blockers, things that actively prevent people from gaining the real-world experiences they need to grow. Two major ones, safetyism and smartphones. Safetyism is the obsession with keeping people safe from everything, including emotional discomfort. Schools ban dodgeball. Parents freak out if a kid walks home alone. Teens aren't allowed to fail, struggle, or experience anything remotely challenging. And guess what? That doesn't make people safer. It makes them fragile, anxious, and incapable of dealing with reality. Smartphones hijack the brain during its most malleable stage, when you're supposed to be learning real-world skills, forming deep friendships, and exploring life. Your attention is being sucked into a bottomless pit of algorithm-driven nonsense. And don't even get started on how social media warps puberty. In normal human history, adolescence was about figuring yourself out in small, manageable ways. Now, you're performing for an invisible audience 24/7. Instead of experimenting with identity in private, every mistake is documented, judged, and broadcasted to the world. We used to earn adulthood through real-world experience. Now people don't feel like adults even in their late 20s because they never had a real transition. And the consequences? Declining independence. Fewer teens are getting driver's licenses, traveling alone, or making major life decisions on their own. Delayed adulthood. People aren't moving out, forming relationships, or taking on responsibility until their late 20s or even 30s. Increased anxiety. The less real-world experience you have, the more terrifying the world seems. And when you've spent your entire life in a digital cocoon, real life feels unbearably overwhelming. Haidt argues that we need to rebuild a clear transition to adulthood. No, that doesn't mean bringing back tribal hunting ceremonies or sending 14-year-olds off to war. But it does mean bringing back milestones, real-world challenges, and age-appropriate responsibilities. Societies that set clear steps into adulthood produce competent, confident adults. Societies that delay and confuse this transition produce permanently anxious, socially stunted people who feel lost in their own lives. Guess which one we are? Key takeaway: puberty is supposed to be the transition into adulthood, but modern society blocked it. Instead of gaining real-world experience, Gen Z was shoved into an infinite digital adolescence. No clear milestones, no increasing responsibility, just an endless cycle of safetyism and screen addiction. The result? A generation stuck in psychological limbo, anxious, unprepared, and struggling to navigate real life. Chapter 5. The 4 foundational harms: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. Your brain is under attack, not by a secret government agency, not by some dystopian AI overlord, by your phone. And the worst part, you're willingly participating in your own destruction. You check it first thing in the morning. You panic when the battery drops below 10%. You scroll for hours, forgetting why you even picked it up in the first place. And then you wonder why you feel like trash. Height breaks it down. The modern phone-based childhood has fundamentally rewired an entire generation, and not in a good way. There are four main ways this is happening: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. Think of them as the four horsemen of digital doom, galloping through your life, wrecking your brain, and laughing while you double tap another meaningless post. First, social deprivation. Once upon a time, aka before 2012, people actually spent time with each other. They talked, they argued, they figured out how to navigate real-life interactions. Then smartphones arrived, and the average time that American teenagers spent in face-to-face interactions with friends plummeted. In 2012, teens were spending 122 minutes a day with their friends. By 2019, 67 minutes. You don't need to be a scientist to see what happened. Instead of hanging out in real life, people started socializing through screens, which, spoiler alert, is not the same thing. Real human interaction is messy, unpredictable, and requires actual effort. Social media, instant gratification, perfectly curated interactions, and an endless supply of dopamine hits designed to keep you coming back. But there's a cost. Without face-to-face interaction, people don't develop basic social skills. They become awkward, anxious, and incapable of handling real conversations. And yet, we wonder why so many people feel lonely as hell in a world where they're connected 24/7. Then, there's sleep deprivation. You probably know you should sleep more. You also probably don't, because your phone is deliberately designed to keep you awake. Haidt points out that as soon as adolescents switched from basic phones to smartphones, their sleep quality nosedived. Longitudinal studies show that smartphone use came first, and then sleep deprivation followed. This isn't just a coincidence. Every app you use is optimized to keep you engaged, whether it's the endless scroll, autoplay features, or notifications that make you feel like you're missing out. The result? You stay up way later than you should, sacrificing sleep for one more video, one more post, one more dopamine hit. And the consequences? Depression, anxiety, cognitive deficits, lower grades, increased accidents, and even early death. But yeah, keep telling yourself that checking your phone at 2 a.m. isn't a big deal. Next up, attention fragmentation. If you feel like you can't focus on anything for more than 5 minutes, you're not imagining it. Your phone is literally rewiring your brain to be incapable of deep thinking. Every app, every notification, every little red dot screaming for your attention, it's all part of a system designed to keep you distracted. The average teen gets hundreds of notifications a day. That means they rarely have even 10 uninterrupted minutes to think. Your ability to focus, stay on task, and complete anything without switching tabs 40 times, gone. This isn't just annoying, it's devastating. Deep work, creativity, problem solving, all of it requires sustained attention. But when your brain is constantly being hijacked by tiny digital interruptions, you never get there. Instead, you get stuck in a cycle of surface-level thinking, endless scrolling, and constant distraction. And that's exactly what the tech companies want. Finally, the big one, addiction. If you've ever tried to cut back on screen time and found yourself physically unable to stop checking your phone, congratulations, you're addicted. And don't fool yourself, this isn't an accident. Social media apps are engineered to exploit your brain's reward system, keeping you hooked just like a casino slot machine. The developers behind these platforms don't care about your well-being. They care about how much time they can steal from you. And the more time you spend on their apps, the more money they make. It's that simple. The real kicker? Addiction doesn't just make you crave your phone. It makes real life feel worse. Dopamine-driven behaviors, like social media scrolling, create tolerance over time. That means what used to feel fun and exciting becomes numb and unsatisfying, and normal activities, reading, socializing, going outside, start to feel boring in comparison. Ever feel restless when you're not on your phone? That's withdrawal. Your brain is literally struggling to function without the artificial stimulation it's become dependent on. And the consequences of long-term addiction, anxiety, depression, emotional instability, and an inability to feel joy from normal life. Hate makes one thing crystal clear. The rise of a phone-based childhood has done more damage to Gen Z's mental health than any other technological shift in history. And here's the most infuriating part. Nobody warned you. Instead, you were handed a device designed to exploit you, pushed into a digital world optimized for addiction, and then blamed for not being able to handle it. So what's the solution? Haidt isn't saying we should all go live in the woods and throw our phones into the ocean, but he is saying that something has to change, because right now, the system is rigged against you. Your phone is stealing your time, your attention, your sleep, your social skills, and your mental health, and the longer you ignore it, the worse it gets. Key takeaway: the modern phone-based childhood has fundamentally rewired an entire generation, leading to 4 foundational harms: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. These aren't just side effects, they are deliberate consequences of a system designed to exploit your brain for profit. Chapter 6: Why Social Media Harms Girls More Than Boys. Social media isn't just bad for mental health, it's a weapon that cuts deeper for girls than boys. It doesn't just waste time, it shatters confidence, breeds insecurity, and turns adolescence into an emotional battlefield where every mistake is permanent, every flaw is public, and every interaction is judged by an invisible panel of critics. Haidt makes it brutally clear. The rise of social media wasn't just an inconvenience for Gen Z girls, it was a psychological earthquake that permanently altered how they see themselves, their relationships, and the world. Let's start with the hard data. Studies consistently show that heavy social media users are significantly more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety than light users or non-users. But here's where it gets ugly. The effect is 3 times worse for girls than for boys. This isn't just correlation, it's causation. Haidt points out that when people are assigned to cut back on social media, their mental health improves. When Facebook rolled out on college campuses, mental health declined, especially for women. So why does social media hit girls harder? Haidt breaks it down into 4 devastating reasons. 1. Girls are more sensitive to social comparison. Boys and girls both compete for status, but they do it differently. Boys typically rank themselves based on skill, dominance, and achievement, things they can somewhat control. Girls, on the other hand, are hyper-attuned to social standing through appearance and relationships. This means that visually driven platforms like Instagram and TikTok are psychological landmines for girls. Social media hijacks the sociometer, the internal gauge that tells you where you stand in social groups. In real life, it fluctuates based on actual interactions. Online, it's brutally amplified. Every post, every selfie, every outfit is a competition for attention. When your entire self-worth is attached to likes, comments, and filters, you're never enough. Studies show that as Instagram use increases, self-esteem plummets, especially for girls. And it's not just about feeling bad, it's about perfectionism. Girls are more prone to socially prescribed perfectionism, meaning they feel immense pressure to live up to impossible beauty and lifestyle standards set by others. And social media, it dials that pressure up to 11. 2. Girls' aggression is more relational, and social media supercharges it. Boys fight physically, girls fight socially, and social media? It's the ultimate weapon for reputation destruction. Think about how bullying used to work. If someone spread a rumor, it might take days to circulate, and it would fade over time. Now, a single post, a single screenshot, and the girl's entire social standing can be wiped out overnight. Cyberbullying isn't just more common among girls, it's more vicious. Haidt cites studies showing that in-person bullying has decreased for boys, but increased for girls, especially younger ones. Social media has made relational aggression permanent, inescapable, and encouraged by algorithmic engagement. Gossip, exclusion, humiliation, it's all public, it's all rewarded with likes and shares, and it never goes away. 3. Girls share emotions more, and social media turns that into a mental health crisis. Ever notice how anxiety and depression spread like wildfire in certain online communities? That's not random. It's called sociogenic illness, mental health issues that spread through social influence rather than biology. Girls are more emotionally expressive and empathetic, which is great in healthy relationships, but a disaster in toxic online spaces. If a girl is anxious and posts about it, it doesn't just stay with her, it affects her whole friend group. The more girls share their struggles publicly, the more those struggles become identity markers rather than problems to solve. Worse, social media platforms reward extreme emotional displays. The more dramatic the struggle, the more engagement it gets. The result? A generation of girls trapped in a cycle of competitive suffering. 4. Social media makes girls more vulnerable to harassment and exploitation. The real world has, slowly, become safer for girls. Social media, it has undone that progress. Height highlights how social media has made it absurdly easy for predatory men to find, contact, and exploit underage girls. It's not just about creepy DMs, it's about how platforms like TikTok actively serve content to older men featuring young girls, normalizing the hypersexualization of teenagers. Even worse, the rise of sextortion. Girls pressured by peers or manipulated by online predators send explicit images that never disappear. Once online, they become leverage for blackmail, humiliation, and lifelong anxiety. And let's not forget the pressure from their own peers. Boys, often classmates, not strangers, pressure girls to send nudes. The moment a girl sends one, she loses control over it. And if she refuses, she risks social rejection. Either way, she loses. Height's verdict? Social media isn't just unhealthy for girls, it's uniquely designed to break them down. The combination of visual perfectionism, relentless social comparison, weaponized bullying, emotional contagion, and increased vulnerability to predation has made it a disaster for female mental health. And the worst part? Tech companies knew this. Facebook's own internal research confirmed that Instagram was making girls more depressed, but they hid the findings because it would hurt their profits. The result? A mental health catastrophe that disproportionately targets girls, leaving them more anxious, more depressed, and more socially fragile than any previous generation. Key takeaway: social media wasn't just bad luck for Gen Z girls, it was an engineered disaster. The combination of impossible beauty standards, cyberbullying, emotional contagion, and sexual exploitation has made it a mental health wrecking ball. And the worst part? The companies profiting off it knew exactly what they were doing. Chapter 7. What is happening to boys? Something is wrong with boys. They're not okay, and it's not just boys will be boys nonsense. It's a full-scale collapse, a silent epidemic that no one seems to care about. The narrative for years has been about girls struggling with social media, and they absolutely are. But boys, they're disappearing, slipping away into digital black holes, falling behind in education, work, relationships, and even basic social competence. Height lays it out with disturbing clarity. Boys have been following a different but equally destructive path through the Great Rewiring. While girls were dragged into the toxic emotional chaos of social media, boys disengaged from the real world entirely. They checked out, and now they don't know how to check back in. Boys used to dominate schools, workplaces, and social spaces. Now, they're failing out, dropping out, isolating, and, most disturbingly, giving up. They're not forming relationships. They're not getting jobs. They're not developing skills. Instead, they're hiding in bedrooms, glued to screens, consuming instead of creating, spectating instead of participating. Hate describes a push-pull effect that has reshaped boyhood. First, the push away from the real world, a combination of overprotective parenting, an education system that penalizes natural male behavior, and a society that increasingly doesn't seem to have a place for them. Then, the pull into the digital world, video games, porn, YouTube rabbit holes, and endless online distractions, all carefully engineered to trap boys in cycles of passive entertainment. Let's talk about school. It's a disaster for boys. Girls have been outperforming boys academically for decades, and the gap keeps growing. In 1972, women earned 42% of bachelor's degrees. By 1982, it was equal. By 2019, women earned 59%, while men earned just 41%. At every level of education, girls are leaving boys in the dust. Boys get lower grades, more ADHD diagnoses, higher dropout rates, and are 3 times as likely to be expelled or suspended. This isn't because boys are dumber. It's because schools have become hostile to how boys learn. They expect kids to sit still, be quiet, and follow rules like miniature office workers. But boys, they learn through movement, exploration, risk-taking, and competition. The education system, built for compliance, now actively punishes their natural instincts. So what do? They retreat into video games. If school tells them they're failures, if real life offers them no clear path forward, why not sink into a world where success is achievable, effort is rewarded, and every challenge is built to be beaten? Hype points out that video games provide boys with what real life no longer does, a sense of agency, mastery, and progression. But here's the kicker, it's not real. Yes, video games can be fun, social, even skill building. But when gaming replaces real-world development, it turns toxic. And for a significant percentage of boys, that's exactly what's happening. Studies estimate that 7% of adolescent boys experience serious real-world impairment due to gaming addiction. That's 1 in 13 boys, struggling with school, relationships, even basic self-care because gaming consumes their lives. And it's not just the games, porn is wrecking them too. Boys have always been interested in sex. That's normal. What's not normal is 24/7 access to unlimited, high-definition, algorithmically optimized hardcore pornography before they've even had their first real romantic experience. Before the internet, getting access to porn took effort. Stolen magazines, blurry VHS tapes, sneaking peeks at late-night TV. Now, it's free, instant, and more extreme than anything nature ever prepared their brains for. Hate highlights the alarming research. Heavy porn users often struggle with real relationships. They report less sexual satisfaction, less attraction to real partners, and higher rates of sexual dysfunction. Porn isn't just a harmless hobby. It's rewiring how boys think about intimacy and connection. So now we have a generation of boys hooked on screens, failing in school, disconnected from relationships, and struggling to engage with real life. And the worst part, nobody is doing anything about it. In fact, society actively mocks struggling young men, painting them as lazy, entitled, or toxic. But Haidt argues that this isn't a moral failure, it's a structural failure. Boys have been abandoned by institutions that once guided them into adulthood. The education system is rigged against them. The economy has shifted away from male-dominated industries. The culture of safetyism has stripped them of opportunities to take risks and build confidence. The digital world has stepped in to provide easy, addictive escapes. The result? They're lost. And if nothing changes, they're not coming back. Key takeaway. Boys are disappearing into the digital world because the real world no longer offers them a clear path forward. Education is failing them, risk-taking is discouraged, and screens provide an easy escape. The result? A generation of young men disengaged, addicted, and struggling to find meaning in real life. Chapter 8. Spiritual Elevation and Degradation. Something deep is broken. You can feel it. It's not just mental health, it's not just politics, it's not just relationships. There's an emptiness, a hollowness in modern life that no amount of scrolling, binge watching, or dopamine chasing can fill. Haidt argues that the phone-based life isn't just damaging our minds, it's corroding our souls. And before you roll your eyes, no, this isn't some religious rant about going back to church. This is about something bigger. The loss of meaning, purpose, and depth in human life. Haidt introduces a concept you probably haven't thought about before, the divinity axis. Every society operates in 3 social dimensions. There's the horizontal axis, how we relate to friends and strangers, the vertical axis, hierarchies of power, and then there's the z-axis, the spiritual axis. It's the difference between feeling uplifted and inspired versus feeling corrupt and degraded. For centuries, people understood this. They sought out awe, wisdom, and higher purpose. Whether through religion, philosophy, or art, humans have always pursued things that lift them up. But today, the phone-based life is dragging people down. Haidt identifies 6 spiritual practices that have been systematically eroded by modern technology. 1. Shared sacredness. People used to gather in rituals, celebrations, and communal experiences that gave life meaning. Whether it was a religious service, a community feast, or even just singing together, these moments bonded people in ways that transcended the self. Now, people sit alone in their rooms, staring at screens, consuming content designed to divide them, outrage them, and keep them addicted. 2. Embodiment. The physical world matters. Our brains evolved to engage with touch, movement, and presence. But now, we live in disembodied virtual worlds where everything is abstract, pixelated, and removed from real human experience. Even eating together, one of the most ancient and universal bonding rituals, has been replaced by watching YouTube while eating alone in your room. 3. Stillness, silence, and focus. When was the last time you sat in complete silence? No background noise, no notifications, no distractions. Probably never. Every ancient wisdom tradition emphasized the importance of stillness, meditation, prayer, deep reflection. Now, the phone-based life is an assault on stillness. Every free moment is filled with stimulation. Every gap in conversation is met with doom scrolling, and silence itself has become unbearable. 4. Self-transcendence. Real spiritual experiences make you forget yourself. Whether through meditation, nature, or profound human connection, there are moments where you become part of something bigger than yourself. But social media, it does the exact opposite. It traps you in your own ego, obsessed with your image, your likes, your brand, your digital identity. Instead of transcending the self, social media locks you inside it. 5. Being slow to anger and quick to forgive. Every major religion and moral philosophy teaches patience, forgiveness, and understanding. Social media, it's a rage machine. It rewards anger, fuels resentment, and turns every minor disagreement into a public execution. Instead of encouraging wisdom, it cultivates pettiness, judgment, and hostility. 6. Finding awe in nature. Awe is one of the most powerful human experiences. It makes you feel small in the best way possible. It reminds you that there's something bigger, older, and more important than your daily stresses. But if you're constantly looking at life through a screen, you never experience it. The more time you spend online, the more your world shrinks into a tiny rectangle of algorithmic nonsense. Haidt argues that this loss of spiritual depth isn't just making us anxious and depressed, it's making us meaner, more isolated, and more nihilistic. And this isn't just about religious people. Atheists feel it too. Every human has what Blaise Pascal called a God-shaped hole, a need for meaning, for something beyond the mundane. If that hole isn't filled with something noble, modern society will fill it with garbage. And what is social media if not a garbage pump for the soul? Instead of wisdom, it gives you hot takes and outrage. Instead of deep connection, it gives you superficial interactions and parasocial relationships. Instead of meaning, it gives you a never-ending fire hose of distractions. Haidt doesn't just diagnose the problem, he offers a way out. The only way to reclaim spiritual elevation in a phone-based world is to actively resist the forces that pull you downward. That means choosing real over virtual, seeking silence over noise, prioritizing wisdom over outrage, and finding meaning beyond the algorithm. And if you don't, then prepare to spend your life trapped in the lowlands of digital degradation, angry, anxious, and spiritually empty. Key takeaway: the phone-based life isn't just making us anxious, it's stripping life of meaning. By destroying stillness, self-transcendence, and real human connection, it has replaced spiritual elevation with digital degradation, leaving us more disconnected, more self-obsessed, and more lost than ever before. Chapter 9. Preparing for collective action. So you've heard all this, nodded along, maybe even felt personally attacked a few times, and now you're wondering, okay, but what the hell do we do about it? Hai isn't here just to rant, he's here to tell you this mess can be fixed, but only if people stop making excuses and actually do something. The problem isn't that change is impossible, it's that everyone assumes someone else should go first. You've probably heard people say, it's too late. Everyone's already addicted to their phones. That ship has sailed. Cool. You know what else people thought was too late to fix? Drunk driving, seatbelt laws, lead poisoning, and secondhand smoke. And guess what? People fought back and won. Haidt makes it clear. If the system is broken, fix the damn system. And that starts with understanding collective action problems. A collective action problem is when everyone knows something is bad, but nobody wants to be the first to change it. Take social media. Most parents don't want their 11-year-old glued to TikTok, but they cave because everyone else's kid has it. The moment some kids get phones, the pressure spreads like a virus. Parents don't want their kids to be outcasts, so they give in. And then, every kid has a phone, and suddenly nobody can escape. It's the same thing with schools. Teachers and administrators know phones are killing attention spans, but banning them? That takes effort. That takes confronting angry parents. That takes dealing with kids who will whine like their oxygen supply just got cut off, so nothing happens. And the problem gets worse. Haidt's point is simple. The only way out is together. No one parent, no one school, no one government official can fix this alone. But when people coordinate, the costs go down. Social pressure can work both ways. Instead of pressuring people to hand kids smartphones at 10, we can pressure them to wait. Haidt outlines 4 ways to break the cycle. 1. Voluntary coordination. This is where groups like Wait Until 8th come in. Parents sign a pledge not to give their kid a smartphone until at least 8th grade, but the pledge only activates if 10 families from the same school sign it. Why? Because nobody wants their kid to be the only one without a phone. This flips the pressure. Instead of caving, parents are reinforcing each other's good decisions. 2. Social norms and moralization. Societies shift when people start treating bad behavior as unacceptable. Drunk driving didn't go down because people suddenly got responsible. It went down because society started shaming people who did it. We can do the same with kids glued to phones instead of playing outside. The culture of, you're a bad parent if your kid isn't constantly supervised, needs to die. Letting kids walk alone, bike alone, and play without helicoptering adults should be normal again. 3. Technological solutions. Right now, the tech industry is playing dirty. They hook kids early, flood their feeds with algorithmically optimized dopamine traps, and then act shocked when mental health crashes. But tech isn't inherently evil, it just needs better incentives. Imagine if phones had built-in age verification that actually worked, or if schools could enforce phone-free zones with lockable pouches. The technology to help already exists. We just need to force companies to use it. 4. Laws and rules. If voluntary action doesn't work, legal action is next. Governments have banned cigarettes from being advertised to kids, forced car companies to add seatbelts, and shut down predatory marketing to children before. Social media, it's no different. Haidt argues that we need clear laws. No social media before 16, real age verification, and phone-free schools. The key takeaway? Waiting around won't fix this. Action will. Haidt's not saying every school needs to be Amish by next week. He's saying that people need to stop acting like this is normal. It's not. A childhood spent glued to a screen isn't inevitable. It's a choice society made, and it's a choice we can unmake. Key takeaway. The only way to reverse the damage of a phone-based childhood is collective action. Parents, schools, and governments must coordinate to break the cycle, enforce new norms, and make real-world childhoods possible again. Chapter 10. What governments and tech companies can do now. Let's be real. Tech companies aren't going to fix this mess out of the kindness of their hearts. Why? Because you are the product, and as long as they can keep you scrolling, clicking, and feeding their ad revenue, they have zero incentive to stop. These platforms were designed to exploit human vulnerability, and that's not some wild conspiracy theory. That's literally what Facebook's first president, Sean Parker, admitted. He flat out said that Facebook was built to consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And when asked about the effects on kids, his answer, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. Tech companies knew they were creating addiction machines. They designed them that way on purpose. Likes, infinite scroll, autoplay, Snapchat streaks. These aren't random features. They are engineered dopamine traps meant to keep you hooked like a lab rat pressing a lever for one more hit. The more time you spend on their apps, the more money they make. And if that means wrecking attention spans, fueling anxiety, and creating a mental health crisis, so be it. The only way this stops is if we force them to stop, and that's where governments come in. Haidt lays out 4 concrete ways to break this cycle. 1. Assert a duty of care. Tech companies need to be held legally responsible for how their platforms affect minors. The UK already passed the Age-Appropriate Design Code, AADC, forcing companies to prioritize child safety in their design choices. The US needs to follow. Right now, social media companies have zero accountability for the damage they cause. That needs to change. 2. Raise the age of internet adulthood to 16. Why is 13 the legal age for social media accounts? Because in the 1990s, the tech industry lobbied for it. It had nothing to do with brain development or psychological well-being. It was just a business move. But we now know that adolescent brains are still developing well into their mid-20s. 13 is way too young to be thrown into an environment designed to hijack attention and exploit insecurities. Governments need to set the age of social media access at 16 with real age verification. 3. Force tech companies to implement real age verification. Right now, anyone can lie about their age and create an account. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, they all claim to have policies against underage users, but in reality, they don't enforce them. Haidt even tested it himself. He created a fake account as a 13-year-old and encountered 0 obstacles. If companies really wanted to, they could implement real age verification tomorrow. They don't because they want those young users hooked as early as possible. The law needs to force them to change. 4. Encourage phone-free schools. The research is clear. Schools that ban phones entirely have better academic performance, fewer distractions, and lower rates of anxiety and depression. But many schools hesitate because they fear backlash from parents. Governments should incentivize phone-free policies, providing funding for phone lockers and pushing for statewide bans during school hours. The problem isn't that solutions don't exist. They do. The problem is that big tech doesn't want them because their entire business model depends on your attention, your data, and your addiction. Haidt compares this to the tobacco industry in the 20th century. For decades, cigarette companies lied about the dangers of smoking. They marketed directly to kids. They rigged their products to be more addictive. And they got away with it until governments cracked down. Social media is this generation's tobacco crisis, and tech companies are fighting regulation just as viciously. They don't care about your well-being. They care about how many hours they can steal from you before you pass out from exhaustion. This can change. It just won't change on its own. Key takeaway. Tech companies built an attention extraction industry that profits off of addiction, anxiety, and distraction. The only way to stop them is through government action, enforce age limits, implement real age verification, and regulate design features that are engineered to exploit human psychology. Chapter 11. What schools can do now. If schools actually cared about fixing the mental health crisis, they would stop throwing band-aids at bullet wounds. More therapists, social emotional learning programs, mindfulness apps, none of it is solving the real problem. Why? Because schools are ignoring the 2 biggest, easiest, cheapest solutions right in front of them, banning phones and bringing back real play. Haidt doesn't waste time sugarcoating it. The modern school system is actively making kids more anxious, more distracted, and more miserable. They're trying to fix the problem with emotional support dogs and breathing exercises while ignoring the 2 elephants in the room: constant digital stimulation and the death of real, unsupervised play. Let's talk about phones first. Every school loves to pretend they have a phone policy, but most of them, completely useless. No phones in class just means kids are hiding them under their desks, sneaking glances whenever the teacher turns away, and obsessing over every notification instead of learning anything. Studies have shown over and over again, kids in phone-free schools do better. Their grades go up, their stress goes down, their social skills actually develop because they're forced to talk to each other instead of staring at screens. But schools are terrified of enforcing real bans because parents will whine. What if there's an emergency? First of all, what did every generation before 2010 do? They called the front office and somehow civilization survived. Second, the real emergency is the fact that kids' brains are turning into overstimulated mush while schools sit back and let it happen. So what's the solution? A real phone ban. Not just put it in your bag. Not just don't use it in class. No, lock them up for the whole day. Schools that have actually done this see immediate results. Kids start paying attention, bullying decreases, and, shockingly, they actually talk to each other again. Now, on to the second fix, play. Free play isn't just nice to have, it's a biological necessity. It's how kids develop social skills, manage risk, build confidence, and learn how to solve problems. But what have schools done? They've slashed recess, over-regulated play, and turned every free moment into an opportunity for more academic pressure. Some schools even go as far as policing how kids play tag. No running too fast, no dodging too hard. God forbid a kid actually trips, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. But here's the thing, real play involves risk. That's what makes it work. When kids are constantly bubble wrapped and supervised, they don't learn how to handle challenges. They just learn how to be fragile and afraid of everything. Height suggests two massive changes: longer, unstructured recess and play clubs. Instead of treating recess like a minor inconvenience, schools should expand it, loosen the rules, and let kids figure things out for themselves. Instead of overloading kids with after-school homework and structured activities, give them time to just play, without adults interfering. The schools that have done this, they've seen incredible results. Less anxiety, less bullying, more actual learning. Why? Because kids who play are mentally healthier, more focused, and less prone to meltdowns. And the best part? These fixes cost almost nothing. Schools don't need to hire more mental health counselors. They don't need expensive new programs. They just need the courage to take away phones and let kids play like humans again. Key takeaway. If schools really want to fix the mental health crisis, they need to ban phones completely and bring back real, unsupervised play. No half measures, no excuses, just do it. The science is already clear. The only thing missing is the will to act. Chapter 12. What parents can do now. Here's the truth. If parents don't step up and change the culture of childhood, nothing else will matter. Schools can ban phones, governments can regulate social media, but if parents keep handing their kids devices like pacifiers and helicoptering their every move, we are just prolonging the disaster. Height makes it painfully clear. Modern parenting is broken, and it's because we have flipped childhood upside down. Kids used to have freedom in the real world and limits in the virtual world. Now, they're locked indoors, micromanaged to death, while their online lives run completely unchecked. This isn't about blaming parents, it's about calling them out. If you want your kids to be independent, confident, and mentally healthy, you need to get out of their way in real life and get in their way online. The first step, stop using fear as an excuse to keep your kids trapped. Parents today act like the world is some post-apocalyptic wasteland where letting a kid walk to the park alone is basically sending them into the Hunger Games. But the truth? The world is safer now than it was in the 80s and 90s. Crime against children has plummeted, but parents' fear has skyrocketed. Why? Because constant news, viral horror stories, and parenting paranoia have created a false sense of danger. Meanwhile, the real danger, the mental and emotional decay caused by screen addiction and social isolation, is happening inside their homes. Height lays out a survival guide for parents who actually want to raise competent humans instead of anxious, fragile, screen-addicted zombies. 1. Delay smartphones as long as possible. Kids do not need smartphones before high school. If you think they do, you've been brainwashed by tech companies and peer pressure. Give them a dumb phone for calls and texts. No one ever died from not having Snapchat. 2. Keep kids off social media until at least 16. Social media is not just a tool. It's an addiction machine that rewires their brain. It's like giving them a cigarette and saying, just don't get addicted. 3. Create no phone zones in your home. Bedrooms, no phones. Dinner table, no phones. Family time, no phones. If you're checking your notifications every 5 seconds, you are the problem. 4. Stop tracking your kids like FBI agents. Surveillance does not create safety. It creates dependency and anxiety. Let them fail. Let them problem solve. If they don't learn how to handle basic situations alone, they will crumble the first time life throws them a curveball. 5. Give your kids real-world freedom. Let them walk to school. Let them go to the store alone. Let them ride bikes with friends. If they never learn to navigate life without a digital leash, they'll grow up terrified of independence. 6. Encourage real-life experiences. Sleepaway camp? Yes. Part-time jobs? Absolutely. Unsupervised play? Non-negotiable. The more time kids spend in the real world, interacting with real people, dealing with real challenges, the better they function as adults. 7. Model what you preach. If your kid sees you glued to your phone, checking emails during dinner, doom scrolling Twitter, and filming everything instead of experiencing it, guess what? They will do the exact same thing. And here's the kicker. Every single one of these actions makes it easier for other parents to follow suit. Parents love to say, but all the other kids have phones, my child will be left out. That's exactly why collective action matters. If enough parents stand up and say, no, we're not doing this anymore, it shifts the entire culture. Every kid who doesn't get a smartphone at 10 makes it easier for another kid to avoid the trap. There's no easy way out of this crisis. It's going to take bold, uncomfortable decisions. But if parents don't step up and start prioritizing their kids' well-being over convenience, then nothing will change. Key takeaway. Parents need to flip childhood back the right way. More freedom in real life, more restrictions online, delay smartphones, ban social media until 16. Stop tracking kids like government spies and give them back the independence that actually builds confidence. Conclusion. Bring childhood back to earth. This was never supposed to be a book about childhood. When Jonathan Haidt set out to write, his focus was social media's impact on democracy. But as he dug deeper, the story that emerged wasn't just about politics, it was about an entire generation breaking down in real time. The data was too overwhelming, the crisis too urgent. The rise of anxiety, depression, and social isolation wasn't just an unfortunate side effect of technological progress, it was the direct consequence of the great rewiring of childhood. And now, the evidence is clear as day. We don't have to guess why Gen Z is the most anxious, fragile, and disconnected generation in history. We know why. Childhood was stolen, replaced with an endless scroll of algorithmic garbage. Real play was cancelled, replaced with notifications, likes, and mind-numbing distractions. Kids were locked out of the real world and dumped into a virtual one they were never meant to survive in. Haidt's final message is blunt. It's time to end the experiment. No more pretending that giving 10-year-olds smartphones is normal. No more accepting that kids should be raised by algorithms instead of human beings. No more watching childhood dissolve into a blur of screen addiction while shrugging our shoulders and saying, that's just how things are now. There are 4 foundational reforms that can immediately begin reversing the damage. 1. No smartphones before high school. You wouldn't give a 10-year-old a bottle of vodka and tell them to drink responsibly. So why are we handing them devices engineered for addiction and expecting anything different? 2. No social media before 16. Kids aren't just using social media. They're being fed into a machine that thrives on their insecurity, rage, and desperation for validation. These platforms are literally designed to keep them hooked. The solution? Keep them out. 3. Phone-free schools. Let's stop pretending kids are digital natives who need their phones for learning. Every study shows the same thing. Phones in school make everything worse. grades, attention spans, social skills, mental health. The easiest fix? Ban them. 4. Far more unsupervised play. The best way to build confidence, problem-solving skills, and resilience. Let kids be kids. Stop micromanaging every second of their lives. Let them roam. Let them take risks. Let them exist outside of constant adult control. These aren't radical ideas. They're just bringing back what worked for every generation before this one. Childhood was never meant to be lived through a screen. It's time to bring it back to earth. So here's the deal. If you care about this, speak up. If you see parents handing a toddler an iPad so they don't have to engage with them, say something. If your school is still allowing kids to sit in class, zombified by their phones, push for a ban. If you're Gen Z and you felt the effects of this firsthand, demand change. And if you want to fully understand just how deep this problem goes, buy this book. Seriously. Read it. Mark it up. Give it to your parents, your friends, your school administrators. The future of childhood depends on people waking up to what's really happening. It's not too late to fix this, but if we don't act now, it soon will be.